It was supposed to be just another drive home. The city lights were flickering on as the sun dipped low behind the buildings, and billionaire Ethan Cole was taking the long route through the quiet park roads, needing a break from meetings and pressure. But what he saw near the old wooden bench made him hit the brakes. At first, he thought it was a pile of blankets left behind, but then he noticed a motionless hand, and beside it, two tiny figures, barely wrapped in thin cloth, unmoving. He jumped out of the car without thinking. A young woman, no older than 20, was lying on the cold grass, unconscious. Her arms were curled protectively around the two babies, who looked just as fragile. None of them were responding. The babies weren't crying. The woman's breathing was faint. In that moment, everything changed. Ethan, known for his cold business decisions and sharp edge, found himself cradling lives he didn't know, racing them to safety. No ID, no explanation. Just a girl and two babies abandoned in a public park, with no sign of how they got there or who they might be running from. Back at his mansion, staff whispered and stared. No one asked questions out loud, but the silence held them. Why her? Why now? And who would leave a girl and two infants alone like that? As the night deepened and doctors worked to stabilize them, Ethan stood in the hallway, his mind racing. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just about helping strangers. There was a story behind those frightened eyes, something hidden in her silence. And whatever it was, Ethan was about to be pulled into it, whether he was ready or not. There, lying motionless on the grass, was a young woman, no older than 20. Her clothes were worn, her face pale. Beside her were two tiny babies wrapped in thin blankets, both eerily still. Ethan's heart dropped. Without thinking twice, he pulled over and rushed to them. He checked for signs of life. Relief washed over him when he felt faint breathing. But they were weak, dangerously weak. Ethan wasn't the type to get involved in strangers' lives, but something about this scene haunted him. Maybe it was the way the woman clung to the babies, even in her unconscious state. Maybe it was the quiet desperation written across her face. Either way, he couldn't just leave them there. Gently, he carried them into his car and drove straight to his mansion, far away from the noise of the city, to a place where they'd be safe. His staff looked on in shock as he arrived with the girl and the babies in his arms. He ordered the doctor to be called immediately and had rooms prepared. No one asked questions. They all knew Ethan wasn't a man of many words, but when he made a decision, no one dared to challenge it. As night fell, the house grew quiet, except for the soft cries of the babies, now slowly coming back to life. But the girl still hadn't woken up. Ethan stood by her bedside, wondering who she was, where she came from, and how someone so young could end up in such a heartbreaking state. He didn't know it yet, but the truth about her past, and the reason she ended up in that park, was darker than he could imagine. And once she opened her eyes, everything in Ethan's world would begin to change. The next morning, the girl finally opened her eyes. Her gaze darted around the unfamiliar room, wide with confusion and fear. Her voice was barely a whisper as she asked, "Where am I?" A maid gently reassured her, telling her she was safe and that Mr. Cole had found her in the park. But as soon as she sat up and realized the babies weren't beside her, panic took over. She tried to get out of bed, but her legs were too weak. "My babies," she gasped, eyes welling with tears. Ethan entered just then, holding one of the infants in his arms. The other was asleep in a crib nearby. "They're safe," he said calmly. "You're safe now." But she didn't look relieved. She looked scared, like being found was somehow worse than being lost. Ethan noticed it, and it made him wonder if someone was after her. She gave her name, Lena, and that was about all she offered. Every question beyond that met silence or a soft, "I don't want to talk about it." Ethan didn't press, but he began making calls. He needed answers. No missing persons report matched her. No family came looking. It was as if she and the babies had appeared out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Ethan's board of directors started asking questions. The press had gotten wind of a woman and children staying at his estate. Rumors swirled. Some said she was a runaway. Others whispered about a secret affair. Ethan ignored them, but pressure was building. His company's image was on the line, and some investors were nervous. Lena knew more than she let on. There was something she was hiding, something dangerous. And the closer Ethan got to the truth, the more he began to realize that saving her might come at a cost. Days passed, but Lena remained guarded. She spent most of her time in the nursery, watching over the twins like her life depended on it. Ethan noticed how she always kept the curtains drawn and flinched at sudden noises. He offered her comfort, tried to earn her trust, but something in her eyes told him she was still waiting for something or someone. And then one night, it happened. A black SUV was spotted idling outside the estate's gates just after midnight. The security team reported it, but by the time they approached, it had vanished. Ethan didn't mention it to Lena, not wanting to scare her further. But the next morning, she was already on edge. "I think they found me," she whispered when she caught Ethan alone. "We have to go." Ethan pressed her for the truth. That's when she finally cracked. "They weren't supposed to find us," she said, voice shaking. "My ex, he's not just controlling, he's dangerous. I left when I realized he was involved in things I couldn't be a part of. The babies aren't even his, but he doesn't care. He thinks I know too much." Ethan's mind raced. He was no stranger to threats or power plays, but this was different. This was personal. Lena wasn't just some random girl. She was running from a man who would stop at nothing to find her. And now, Ethan's mansion, his staff, his own life, everything was exposed. That night, as the wind howled through the trees and shadows stretched across the estate, a silent alarm tripped on the west perimeter. Someone was trying to get in. Ethan rushed to the control room, his heart pounding. Outside, in the darkness, danger was moving closer, and Lena's past had finally caught up with them. Ethan stared at the surveillance screen, eyes narrowing as he watched the blurry figure moving through the trees. Whoever it was, they knew how to avoid the cameras, like they'd done this before. Security scrambled toward the area, but Ethan had a feeling they wouldn't catch whoever was out there. He was right. By the time they reached the west perimeter, the figure was gone, leaving only a torn piece of fabric snagged on the fence. Lena's panic earlier suddenly made more sense. This wasn't just paranoia. Someone was tracking her, and they were getting closer. But that wasn't the only problem. The next morning, as Ethan checked in with his legal team about increasing security, one of his assistants handed him an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo, blurry, black and white, clearly taken with a long lens. It was of Lena, in his mansion's living room, holding one of the babies. Scrawled in red marker across the image were the words, "Asterisk, she doesn't belong to you, asterisk." Ethan felt a chill crawl down his spine. Lena saw the photo and turned pale. "He's warning you," she said quietly. "He knows where I am now. And if he's leaving messages, it means he's close enough to act." But just when Ethan thought he was beginning to understand the threat, another piece of the puzzle dropped. A phone call came in from a private investigator he hired days earlier. "There's something you need to see," the man said. "That girl, Lena, she's not who she says she is. Her real name isn't Lena, and there's a sealed file in her past connected to a federal case." Ethan froze. Not only was someone hunting her, but now he had to wonder, was Lena running from danger or hiding something even worse? Ethan drove straight to the investigator's office, heart pounding. The sealed file sat on the desk, thick and worn. When he opened it, the truth hit him like a punch. Lena, real name Elena Carter, had once been placed under federal protection. Years ago, she'd been the sole witness in a massive case against a powerful underground network. The babies weren't hers biologically. She'd rescued them from a trafficking ring tied to the same criminals she testified against. Her disappearance hadn't just been an escape, it was survival. Back at the mansion, Lena paced the room with the babies cradled close. She knew it was only a matter of time. That night, just as the house began to settle, the power cut out. Silence fell, then a shattering crash from downstairs. Ethan grabbed the gun from his safe and rushed toward the noise, adrenaline kicking in. Two masked intruders were already inside, and they weren't there to talk. A struggle broke out. Glass broke. Shots fired. One of the men lunged for the stairs, but Lena, clutching her fear, had already hidden the twins in a locked room. She stepped out, hands trembling but steady, and faced the second man. It was him, her ex. The man who'd promised to find her no matter what. But this time, she didn't run. Ethan appeared just in time, forcing him down and holding him there until the police stormed in. With sirens wailing in the distance and officers swarming the estate, the nightmare was finally over. Or so they thought. The next morning, as Ethan watched the sunrise with Lena and the babies finally safe, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Asterisk, you took what wasn't yours. Now I'm coming for you, asterisk. The danger wasn't over. It had only just begun. Ethan stared at the message, the weight of everything catching up to him. But this time, he didn't feel fear. He felt clarity. He'd seen the truth behind Lena's silence, her strength in the face of fear, and her willingness to protect two innocent lives that weren't even her own. She wasn't running anymore, and neither was he. The threat in the message was real, but he had the resources and connections to fight back. More importantly, he wasn't alone. Lena sat across from him at breakfast, the twins babbling softly between them. "We can't live in fear forever," she said, her voice calm now. "They took enough already." Ethan nodded. He'd already hired a team to investigate the message, and the man from the night before was behind bars facing serious charges. With her sealed case reopened and new evidence now in federal hands, law enforcement had begun dismantling the group she once helped expose. The message might have been a warning, but it was also desperate, a sign they were losing power. The media had its field day, of course. Billionaire rescues woman tied to federal case made headlines, but Ethan stayed quiet. The real story was never about fame. It was about second chances. About seeing someone in need and choosing to help, no matter the risk. Weeks passed. The mansion was no longer a place of cold walls and business meetings. It had become a home. Lena started smiling more. The babies laughed freely, and Ethan, for the first time in years, felt something close to peace. The danger might return someday, but for now they were safe. Together. And sometimes that's all it takes to start over. A moment of kindness that leads to a life no one ever saw coming.